harder to identify than the other animals on the reserve. If you look towards the tree line though, you can usually lock in on their movement. Now if you look to the left on top of the hillside, you'll see a bongo. And they're actually rarely found in the wild because their distinctive stripes will help break up their coats from the terrain. And then if you look in the back right corner on that hillside, you'll see an okapi just on the other side of the trees. They are very reclusive animals, usually found by themselves or in pairs. And they are thought to be relative of the zebra due to the similar stripe patterns on their hindquarters. But their closest living relative is actually the giraffe. Researchers know this due to their similar skull structures, as well as some other characteristics they share, like long prehensile tongues, can actually grow to be up to 18 inches long. Now you want to look to the left, just on top of the hillside. You can make out the backside of a black rhinoceros. They are one of the smaller rhino species in Africa, reaching about 3,000 pounds. So still growing quite large, and they can charge at up to 35 miles per hour, so moving pretty fast for that large size. Now we're going to be making our way to the Safi River territory. It's the next area of the reserve. Typically, you'll locate Nile crocodiles and Nile hippopotamus at the river, so we'll see what we can find down there. The hippos are nocturnal, so that means they do their activity at nighttime. So during the day, you'll usually find them in the water where they submerge themselves for about 5 to 8 minutes at a time. That's how long they hold their breath. And then at nighttime, they'll come on the land to do their grazing, as they are herbivores, so they eat grass and plants. Now if you look to the left up ahead, just on the other side of the large island, there are a couple of hippos just sticking out of the water. The male hippos grow to be up to 5,500 pounds, so they are one of the largest species in Africa. And due to their large size, the hippos will submerge themselves all the way to the bottom of the river and walk or run along the bottom to get around a lot easier. On top of the large island, you'll see some large white birds. They are called pink-backed pelicans. They get their names from the pink coloration of their skin that appears during their mating season. With a wingspan of about 7 to 9 feet wide, it's approximately as wide as the canopy on the truck above your head. Now you want to look to the left as we go across this bridge. You'll see some Nile crocodiles. They are the largest species of crocodilian in Africa, growing up to 16 feet long and over 500 pounds heavy. They also are known for very powerful jaws, containing over 2,000 pounds of force per square inch. Ultimately, that means they are capable of crushing the bone of their prey in just one snap of that jaw. Now I know that does sound pretty ferocious, right? Crushing bone, but they can also be very gentle. For example, when their eggs start to hatch, the parents will pick them up and roll them around in their mouths, which allows the eggs to hatch a lot faster and easier. That just goes to show you how much control they can exhibit over the strength they use, because they go from crushing bone to being so gentle, they don't crack an egg. Now the next area of the reserve is called the savanna. It's home to some of the more famous animals in Africa, such as giraffes, zebras, elephants, and more. So we'll see what other animals we can find on our adventure today. One thing you'll notice though is that savanna terrain is a lot different than the forest. The trees open up, so there's a lot more wide open spaces, which means that animals here don't really rely on camouflaging because there's not a whole lot to camouflage against. So instead, they will rely on some other natural characteristics to help them defend themselves from predators. And we'll point those characteristics out as we find the animals. left up ahead, there will be a couple of species in the grassy area. The really large caramel-colored antelope are the Patterson's eland, and then in the distance you'll see some darker antelope with the long horns. They're called sable antelope. And those long horns are a great example of a natural defense mechanism the animals have in the savannah, because those horns will help deter predators, especially those that would jump on the antelope's back to capture it like a lion. And then those Patterson's eland that we are passing are actually the largest species of antelope in Africa. They can grow to be up to 6 feet tall at the shoulder and also jump up to 8 feet high in the air. Then you'll also see some black and white animals to the left. They are the Hartmann's mountain zebras. There are actually several subspecies of zebras. You can identify them based on their coat patterns usually. And then the really tiny antelope to the left are called the springbok. Now they get their names from being able to quite literally spring forward about 13 feet forward and 6 feet high in the air. Now those Hartmann's mountain zebras that we saw, you can distinguish them from the other subspecies of zebras because they have thicker stripes on their hindquarters and fully white underbellies. They also have a fold of skin under their neck called a dewlap. And no other zebra species has that feature. Will help the Hartmann's mountain zebras to regulate their body temperature, which is a pretty important characteristic to have in the savannah because the climate is known to be very dry and hot. So being able to keep cool or regulate their temperature becomes very important, especially during the drought season, which is a long period of time without rain. It can be very dry and hot at that time for the animals. If you look to the right on the hillside, there are a few different species. Really tall animals are the Maasai giraffe. They're actually the tallest animals, reaching about 18 feet tall. And then the silver animals are the white bearded wildebeest. They have an average lifespan of about 3 years in the wild because they're a large source of prey for predators like lions. And then those other animals with the really big horns are called the Ankole cattle. Their horns are thought to be very heavy due to their large size, but they're actually quite light and remain mostly hollow. They have honeycomb-like structures throughout their horns, which will help them regulate their temperature by circulating their blood throughout their body. Now, do you remember from the forest when we saw the okapi closely related to the giraffes? They have those tongues reaching up to 18 inches long, just like the giraffe's tongues. And the giraffes spend about 20 hours in a day eating, using those tongues to strip leaves and bark from the tops of the trees. And they only sleep for about 30 minutes in the day, so most of that time is spent collecting food. If you look to the left, just in between the bushes, there are a couple of mandrills, some on top of the rocks to the left as well. They're actually some of Africa's largest and most colorful primates with little cheek pockets on the sides of their mouths that they'll use to store snacks for later. Now the males will reach about 100 pounds. Females stay about 30, so you can usually identify them based on those size differences. And then if you look to the right in the clearing, there is a large African elephant. Actually the largest land animals, reaching about 12,000 pounds. They consume up to 300 pounds of food per day. So a large portion of their day will be spent eating like the giraffes. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the animals you'll see on the reserve are threatened in the wild by poaching and habitat destruction, the top two contenders that lead to animal population loss. And most animals are targeted for specific characteristics by poachers. So those elephants are typically poached for their tusks, which are made of ivory, but they're also known to be poached by farmers in Africa because the elephants will travel on the farmland and trample or eat the crops, which destroys the farmer's livelihood. So they revert to poaching the elephants in order to protect their source of food and income. But by tracking elephant behavior here at Disney's Animal Kingdom, we recognize that they are afraid of the sound of bees buzzing. So we take that information to farmers in Africa, Now they can put up beehive fences around their farmland, like a little fence post with a beehive box on it, and that will help naturally protect the crops and the elephants. It also helps the bee population, and the farmers get to harvest the honey, so all parties benefit. Now if you look to the left on the other side of these tall bushes, there are a couple more elephants, so we'll go around to the other side where the trees open up and hopefully get a better view of them.
Remember that time when we were on safari and the giraffe actually was right in the middle of the road?
Yeah. Wait for it to move out of the way.
Now you'll usually find elephants in large groups that are called herds, and they're made up of females and children. Males remain a lot more solitary, usually found by themselves or in little bachelor groups, which is just a term in the animal kingdom world for males that don't have families or homes, so they bond together. And the males leave the herd at about 16 years old. That's the age of adulthood for elephants. But they do remain pretty local to that larger herd because the matriarch, the female leader of the group, will call the males back for a couple weeks at a time. So they'll stay close enough to hear her trumpet, letting them know to come back. To the left, those large pink birds are the greater flamingo. Actually one of the largest flamingo species and the lightest pink flamingos. Now they get their pink feathers from consuming beta carotene, which is a mineral that's found in brine shrimp, a large portion of their diet. You'll also notice a couple of smaller gray flamingos in the group. They are the younger ones and remain gray like that until they're about 18 months old. And then you get the view of the elephants just in the background too. To the left, there are some scimitar horned oryx laying down. They get their names for the shape of their horns, said to look like a scimitar sword. They represent a great conservation success story because they were once thought to be extinct. But after a lot of efforts to protect them, they are making a bit of a comeback and can be found on animal reserves like this one. And then to the right, just near the tree line, you'll see a bontebok, that dark chestnut-colored antelope. They were almost extinct in the early 20th century. There was less than 20 of them in the world. Farmers in the area helped pull them together to have them reproduce until they could be relocated to animal reserves like this one, which is really the only place you can find them to this day. So both of those antelope species represent great examples of how important it is to partner in conservation to protect the animals. Now up ahead we are entering big cat territory, so let's see what we can find up ahead. And you look to the left in the back of that hillside, there are some cheetahs. They are the fastest land animals and can sprint at up to 60 miles per hour, reaching that speed in just 3 seconds. Now they'll maintain their speed for a few hundred yards, so contrary to typical belief, they do not exhaust their prey to capture it. So that requires being long distance runners with a lot more endurance than the cheetahs have. So they rely more on ambushing their prey to quickly capture it. And their claws do not retract, which is pretty unique for cat species in general. Most of them are capable of sheathing and unsheathing their claws at will, But the cheetah's claws are out ready to go 24/7. That does give them some extra traction when they're running though, so it helps them out to gain an advantage on their prey. Now to the left, this large rock structure is called a copy. Typically lions will make their homes from the tall rocks because they like to sun themselves. Maybe like just toward the edge of those rocks, you'll see the lions laying down. They can spend up to 20 hours in a day remaining inactive and are nocturnal, so that activity that they do have will be done at nighttime, usually to hunt and eat. And it's the female lions that will do the hunting while the males stay behind protecting the cubs. Now you can identify the male from the female because they have those large, beautiful manes that can weigh up to 80 pounds by themselves, so pretty thick and heavy coats on those males. Now to the left, there will be some large burrows. They're home to the world's largest burrowing animal, the warthog. Those warthogs are just near the last burrow by the hillside. They have razor sharp tusks which they will use to defend themselves and dig out their burrows. Often when predators get close, they will back themselves in their burrows so that just their tusks stick out. And that will help ward off the predators. And then to the right, there are some large white rhinoceros. Actually the larger of the rhino species in Africa, reaching about 5,000 pounds. And then just past them are some large eggs on the ground, the ostrich eggs. Those eggs will weigh up to 3 pounds apiece with a very strong outer shell that will not be broken even under the weight of a fully grown human male. Those eggs are so large because the ostriches are the largest species of bird, but they remain flightless, so they do not fly. Now those white rhinos, you might have noticed that their skin color is not really white. It's actually very close to the black rhino, more of a gray color. They get their names from the Afrikaans word "wit," which when translated is best identified to mean wide rhino after their large size and broad mouths. Now friends, at this time we'll be making our way back to the Warden's Post to get you on to your next adventure. So I'd like to say Asante Sana means thank you in Swahili. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed our safari adventure. We definitely got to see a lot of great animals out there. But if you'd like to see more, there's a lot of ways to keep seeing some unique species throughout the park. So you can start with the animal walking trails. There are 2 in the park. The closest one will be to the right when you exit the safari.